Welcome. Today we have Meena Ruchi. She is an Akashic Records reader and meditation instructor. She helps people who feel stuck or uninspired connect with their purpose so they can cultivate clarity and contentment. After spending over a decade seeking her own purpose and finally finding it through the Akashic Records, she finds great joy in bringing this magical perspective to others, helping them to find greater clarity and meaning in their own lives. Welcome, Meena.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here today. It's such a wonderful thing to share with everyone. And you are the first person who is an Akashic Readers on my podcast. So I want to really share that with everyone that is not familiar with it.
Oh, how cool. I'm honored.
Yes. So the first question that I ask everyone is, what does enlightenment mean to you?
Oh my gosh, that's a casual question to start off with. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Hmm. I don't know if that's something that can be captured in words, and I'm just present to the fact that that means so many different things to so many different people. But I think for me, it just means being who you are in this moment.
Yes.
Hmm.
Wonderful. And yes, it is deep discussions. I go right to it. I'm not much for small talk. So, before we get into exactly what the Akashic Records are and how you work with them, I'd like to hear a little bit about your story and how you came to your awakening of your gifts.
Yeah. So I'll try to give you the short version. Since I was a pretty young kid, I just really wanted to know what my purpose was. And I was just so curious. I had this sense that I felt this time pressure from an early age. I had anxiety since I was really little. I didn't know that there was a word for that because that's just how I was for as long as I can remember. So I had this, let's get to business, let's get this stuff done, let's figure out what my purpose is so I can then do it and then be done with it. And there was this sense of efficiency and just blinders, like deep focus on this thing. I just wanted to get it right and be done with it. And I didn't want to waste any time. And so as a young teenager, that was just my hobby, was trying to figure out what my purpose was. And I was listening to different spiritual teachers talk and reading different books and taking personality quizzes, anything that could point me in that direction. But I never got a satisfactory answer. I got these like musings and deep philosophies on the purpose of humanity in general. And I was like, I don't care about that. I want to know what my purpose is as an egocentric like kid. I want to know what I'm here to do so I can do it. And it was really fun discovery and exploration process. And then when I went to college, my anxiety got very severe. And that hunger to figure out what my purpose was got more intense. So everything kind of just got keyed up and more intense when I went to college. And I had all kinds of health issues and I was addicted to my work. And I was just pouring all of my vitality into school, thinking if I work hard at this, I will get a sense of fulfillment and this will be my purpose. And I was just like, someone tell me what to do so I can do it. And it was absolutely maddening to put all of my energy into something that gave me nothing in return. So I was like working so hard to do a good job at whatever I was doing. And I would complete something and feel good for like 10 seconds and then be crushed by this like wave of meaninglessness. I was like, oh my God, this doesn't matter. You're wasting all your time. And so then to cope with that, I would just work hard at the next thing, at the next project or task or whatever. And so it was this weird cycle that just really wore me out. And that question in the back of my mind was like, why am I here, right? What's my purpose? And it became more and more dark and distorted of why am I here? I don't need to be here. I can't figure this out. There's no point. And so it was really sad time. And I ended up graduating in May of 2020. So to just punctuate that whole cute experience, just graduated at a really chaotic time in the world. And my whole life goal was to get a job. And all of the companies I was interviewing with went on a hiring freeze. So I needed something to kill the time while I waited for things to go back to normal. And since I was always kind of into this like mystical stuff, I was open to anything related to purpose. I stumbled upon this course around the Akashic Records. When I heard what it was, I was like, there's no way that's real, but I'll just give it a shot anyway. It sounds really fun. And I was blown away when it worked. And over time working with the records, it took some time to cultivate that connection. But when I did, I finally got that clarity, that felt sense of clarity that I had been looking for over a decade at that point. And really what the records did for me was open up my mind that had become so narrow as to what was available to me, to remind me and show me that there's more than one path to go through life on. And that really blew my mind, because I just thought you go to school, you get a job, and then you work at that job, eventually you retire, and then you die, and that's it. And so that's why I really wanted to nail the purpose thing, because I thought that's what that was. And so I was gifted with this much more expanded view of what purpose and fulfillment could look like, what life could look like for me. And that was a game changer for me. And so slowly I kind of unhooked from what I was doing and transitioned into doing this, because I could feel the potential of this work. And it's like nothing I ever thought I would be doing. And yet here I am.
Isn't that interesting how the universe always guides us when we're willing? Yes. And I resonate very much with your story, because I very much was in that frame of living where you go to college, you get your degrees, you get your job, and you just go, step in line. And I mean, I was always very mystical and interested in those things too, and always searching and always questioning. But it was a constant ladder where I was just kind of like, maybe this is it, and put my whole self into it. Maybe this is it, put my whole self into it. And then just kept not feeling that fulfillment. And so many times we find that we think, well, this is meaningless, or this has no point, and there's no reason, and I just threw that money away, or I don't know why I spent all my time on that. And when we actually gain that larger perspective, we start to see that they're all parts of the puzzle, and that they all really do play off each other, and they all really do all need to be there for you to do where you end up, right? But it just doesn't seem like it makes sense when you're in it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense while you're in it. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that like took me years, even after finding the records, to like really understand, is that purpose can look a lot of different ways. And it's not just this like shiny, perfect flow state, fulfillment, everything is working amazingly kind of thing that I think we're sold that idea.
Yeah.
I do feel, looking back, that that deep struggle, that deep despair, that addictive kind of alcoholism, all of that, the health problems I had, that was one facet of purpose. That was, in a weird way, alignment. Like being so out of alignment was necessary. So feeling deeply out of alignment and nothing is working was part of this overarching sense of alignment, because I wouldn't have known what alignment felt like. I wouldn't have been able to recognize it if I hadn't been so practiced and experienced at what like misalignment looked and felt like for years.
That's profound. Yes. It just underscores that sometimes we feel like we're totally going in the wrong direction, but it's actually you're right where you need to be, which is hard to accept when you're trying to make things happen.
Yeah.
And you have a preconceived idea of how they're supposed to be. Also, a preconceived idea of how you're supposed to be. So, like what you were saying with the trajectory that you put in front of yourself, which so many of us do, or we acquire that from society or what have you. But it's a challenge that everybody faces when they realize that there's something else, maybe that another direction they could go in, but it takes so much courage to go in that direction that many times people don't.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think for me, I wouldn't have been able to muster up that courage to do such a huge turn from what I was doing to this. It's worlds apart. And I don't think I would have had the courage to do it if I hadn't been in such a desperate place. I had to almost put myself in a corner and remove all other options to then finally be like, this is not working. And I needed this magical intervention, thank goodness, through the records that came. But yeah, I wouldn't have been looking for any of this if I wasn't suffering in some capacity, you know?
Oh, yes. I completely agree with that. And I think that that's how everybody comes to it. And that's what makes her story so powerful is that you really have to go through the dark place before you get to the light. And everybody's story is of what their dark place was. And I love the magical intervention. I love that phrase because that's the same for me as spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening might mean something religious to other people, but for me, it's a magical intervention. It's you kind of waking up and realizing I can't go any further this way. So either something has to change or we're calling it off, essentially. And that's when that intervention happens.
Yeah, yeah. And oh my goodness, I pushed it as far as I could. I really wanted to make it work. I really tried so hard to the point where I could feel death upon me. I could feel like my body aging so rapidly. And yeah, and it was the sheer willpower. I was so stubborn, and that's maybe why it took a while to accept that it wasn't working, and I couldn't read the signs until it was absolutely undeniable that this is not working for you.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think if someone is in that position now where it feels like they're out of alignment and they're hearing this like, oh, out of alignment might actually be this overarching sense of alignment in the long run. And that, like you said, might be hard to accept. I don't think you have to accept it. It's okay to fight it. And that itself might be part of it. And I think that's something that we're not really told is you don't have to like the process. You don't have to like it. You're allowed to not like it, and that's okay.
That's so that's so true. Yes. It's not easy. So you don't have to like it. Yes, you just have to appreciate the other side, right? Once you get to the other side, it's like, oh, that perspective then looking back. And it's not everything's easy then. You just gain wisdom from your experience and you just keep gaining, right? It just keeps unfolding. So talk a little bit about the Akashic Records on 1,000-foot level for people who are still, but I don't get it. What is that?
Yeah. So when I first heard about the Akashic Records, it was described like this. The Akashic Records are the subtle energetic imprint of everything that has ever happened, everything that is currently happening, and everything that could possibly happen in the future. So it's this energetic compendium of infinity and eternity. That sounds so poetic and beautiful. And I had no idea what they were talking about when they said that. I was like, what does that mean? What's a compendium?
Where is it? Is it heavy to pick
Yeah.
up?
Yeah. Like, where is it? What are you talking about? Yeah, it just totally went over my head, but it intrigued me at the same time. And now, after working with them, the way that I like to describe them, kind of a playful way to imagine it, is if you can imagine an invisible library in space that has books on every subject you could imagine, including you or your own essence or soul. In an Akashic record reading, when I'm working with someone one-on-one, it's like we're checking out the book on you, and you have the opportunity to ask questions and receive insight from a zoomed out perspective. And some people call the record spiritual Google because it's as though you can come to a reading. It's not as though you can come to a reading and ask all the questions you wish you could Google about yourself. Like, why am I here? What's my purpose? How am I meant to be of service? What are my unique gifts? How can I improve my relationships? Why did I choose my family? And things like that. All these big, burning existential questions are things you can bring to a reading. And the Akashic Records essentially will offer a perspective if it's relevant, if it's uplifting, if it's empowering. Otherwise, they might stay silent. But they'll offer a perspective that will help you see areas of your life that you feel stuck around in a new way. So it's really all about pivoting to look at things from a different angle, to see things differently, and to essentially use a new perspective to get unstuck. And you can think of it almost like if you're going down a path and there's a big boulder, the Akashic Records are kind of like that bird's eye view where you can see, oh, there's a rock in my way and I cannot go around it. But if I look left, there's another path through this bush that I wasn't even looking at. And like over here behind this curve, there's like a waterfall. And actually, maybe these other paths can lead and curve around to the same place I was going. Or there's other options that go in totally different directions I didn't consider. So it's, yeah, getting kind of a zoomed out perspective on things to kind of get this like magical intervention going to get unstuck.
And who would you explain is providing the information?
Yeah. And that's like an inherently mysterious thing. The records are a really mysterious modality. But you can think of, if we think of the records like a library, you can think of the library having librarians or the keepers of the Akashic Records. And you can call them by a lot of different names. Some people like words like angels or spirit guides or ethereal beloveds. But it's really like these unknown, benevolent forces who are the ones taking out the book, translating the information, right? Telling you the response to the question. And I am just translating it to the person in front of me. And that's really all I'm doing.
So, how is it different from mediumship?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think there's sort of some similarities, but the thing that like really drew me to the records, I am so scared of going to psychics because I don't know what they're going to say. And the thing I love about the records is that it is rooted in consent. The records will not give any information unless you ask a question. So there's this implicit and explicit relation of consent where if you don't ask, they will not answer. And so you're not going to go into a reading and get a bunch of information that you didn't want to know about or that feels irrelevant. And I think that's one way it's different, where it's not just like someone is before me and I'm just spouting off all this information, but they ask and then there's a response.
I also have seen so many guides that talk about the different questions to ask. And those are very useful in gauging how it works, how the exchange works, because it's not a should I do this or should I do that kind of change. It's more of the way that the questions are phrased for optimal intervention, let's say, is interesting to me. And of what I've studied from it, I think there's a real benefit to how it's worded. But I also see that also your energetic questioning as well. So it's not just a verbiage thing, but
Yeah.
it's asking more for perspective and guidance rather than a definitive answer.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you nailed it. And that's so true that it's not, the records will never tell you what to do. And in a reading, I always say you can ask anything you want, but the records may or may not respond to your question.
Mm-hmm.
And each reader has their own style. And the way that I work with the records and the keepers that I work with are so picky about the words. They're really picky about the intentionality and the charge behind the question.
Right.
And so if you ask questions like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Tell me what to do. Yes or no questions. Anything that's like, someone please tell me what to do, the records won't respond. And the reason that is because the keepers of the records respect you and your power, your creative power too much to pretend even for a moment that it doesn't exist. They won't deny you of your power, and they will insist that you hold on to your power for the entire duration of the reading. So not even for a moment can you ask a question that gives up your power. And I think that's important.
Definitely. And I also find it interesting that the opportunity that the records provide to interdimensionally into other existences that you may have had or be in, or other contracts, soul contracts, timelines, other things that might be influencing your current existence.
Getting that kind of richer, broader perspective that can dip into different timelines, past and potential, it can be a really nice way for you and your own mind to zoom out a little bit, because the records are inherently this broader view, but that is one way that you and your mind can get on board with zooming out and being like, oh, let's look at the larger patterns at play. Let's look at the potential trajectory of this path and what might it look like? What might it feel like if I chose to pivot or chose to engage with this pattern that's been here for a long time in all these different ways? What if I chose to engage with that differently? And what might that lead to?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's pretty empowering.
Yes. And I found that in the reading that you did for me in very much that way, that I was able to look at things from a different perspective. And it really actually gave me appreciation for the things that I may have not really appreciated before, in terms of the fact that they actually were part of the catalyst that led me to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be painful to look at past life threads, and it can be painful even in this one lifetime to notice how hooked into a pattern you are and how that pattern has played out in ways that are not great. And that's a tender thing and to look at, and it takes courage, I think, to witness that. But I think doing that is sometimes worthwhile because it can inspire acceptance, right? Of like, oh, this was not good, and yet maybe it gifted me something too. Or this is just how it was, and maybe it wasn't my fault. And you can kind of quiet down this blame and be, okay, I have a little bit of a context, of course. And giving yourself a little bit of compassion and grace. Yeah, of course I was scared of this, or of course I was being defensive about that. Like, look at what I've been through. And so you can kind of just arrive at a place of not blaming or denying or fighting it, and accept it. And from that space of, okay, I can accept this, now you can choose differently. And you're not plagued by fighting it and resisting it. And I think that's what that serves, to get that broader view.
Yes, absolutely. It reframes in a way that helps you better accept and almost be, in a weird way, grateful for your suffering. I mean, it's hard to say that, but
Yeah.
it is a way of seeing that.
Yeah. And I think that is beautiful if you can arrive at that place of gratitude. And I don't think that's the case for everyone. It's hard to get there. And I think maybe over time you can arrive at that place. But just seeing it served a purpose, or to see this was not my fault. It's not my fault I'm like this. And I have the creative power to choose differently now. And sometimes part of that is grief, to just acknowledge the grief of what has happened and to process that so it's not plaguing you anymore.
Yes. Yes. So it really has a deep healing potential, much like dream work, in that it uncovers all of that and allows you to then integrate it in a way that transforms you, transforms your perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. And from that transformed perspective, transforming how you engage with life from this moment onward. And I think that's the real rich potential, because understanding is one thing, but conscious action, right? Aware action and conscious choice, that's what real transformation is made out of.
Yes. And I've noticed that a lot of people feel called to the records, and it finds you, it seems, because I hadn't heard about it till maybe last year or something. I thought, what is this? I'd never heard of it. And so I think it finds you when you're supposed to know, and when that invitation arrives. And I think it's interesting, just to go back to what you were saying about personality tests, because I love those as well. And I find that certain people are drawn to certain modalities because of their personality. And I've talked about it before on the show, but I'm, by the Myers-Briggs, I'm an INFJ, and that is classified as the counselor. And I also made a note of some of the other things it says about INFJ, because I really feel like if you were to take it, it just might be you, because INFJs want a meaningful life and deep connections with other people. And although their rich inner life can sometimes make them seem mysterious or private to others, they profoundly value authentic connections with people they trust. And they have an intrinsic drive to help others realize their potential. And lastly, they are gifted with an uncanny insight into people.
That is so specific.
Yeah. Yeah, I see you giggling the whole time, because I was like, yes, Meena, I think you are.
Yeah, oh, that's so funny. I took that quiz when I was a young teenager. I must have been like in high school, early high school, and I don't think that's the one that it was, but that description resonates now.
Yes. And lastly, gentle, caring, and complex.
So interesting.
Yes. So, well, on that note, I deeply appreciate the work that you do. It's dramatically helped me, and I want my listeners to be able to experience you as well. So, where can people find you?
Yeah. The best place to connect with me is on my website, which is meenaruchi.com. And you can see in the show notes how I spell my name. That's where I have all my offerings. I post videos every week, and I share a newsletter once a week where I'm channeling from the records. So there's a lot of goodness there. I have a free guided visualization. So there's things really, like, there's simple ways to kind of dip your toes in, and there's ways that you can do deep dives into the records too. So yeah, lots of goodness waits for you there.
Awesome. So I'm also going to link to your free Heart's Desires guided visualization so people can check that out. And I just thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed our conversation and I honor the work that you do.
Thank you so much. This was a treat.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this episode? You can now send me a text message and share your experience. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Head over to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button as well to be part of my growing community. Are you ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey? Don't miss out on the new Dream Empowerment programs. Unique opportunities for you to unlock your inner wisdom, discover your authenticity, align with your higher self, and bring abundance into your life. If you'd like your dream or awakening story featured on my show, submit it today. Your dreams have the power to inspire and enlighten other women on their journey. Visit meganmary.com to find out more.